Cryptocoryne Usteriana. Interesting plant. Discovered by a Swiss botanist that got his degree in Germany. Then discovered Cryptocoryne Usteriana and described it in 1902 or 1903. A guy named Alfred Usteri? Don't really know how to say his name. Don't even know if I say Usteriana correctly. Probably not, but very cool plant. It's been around for quite a long time in the hobby, especially having been discovered 120 years ago, whatever. Now, one of the things that's very interesting about this plant is that it comes from an area that is wet, submerged in the winter, and then completely dries out in the summertime. So it is a very durable plant and will melt off at any sign of big time changes in the water. Now, subtle changes, a little bit of pH swing here and there, not a big deal. A little bit of temperature swing, definitely not a big deal. But it will melt back, but don't stress, because it'll come back with a frenzy for sure. Some places actually ship these around they just cut the leaves off before they even ship them out. I don't recommend that if you are going to be, trading these with somebody or selling them at a local club or something like that. I don't recommend that method because, you're kind of eliminating the, how nice this plant is and how nice yours is that you may be selling or giving to somebody else. As I mentioned, during the summertime, this plant will get completely dried out, but there is a little bit of rhizome to it, even though it is I think it's a rosette plant. I might be wrong. Somebody might get super mad at me on that one. It's possible. But it does have a little bit of rhizome within the root and stuff like that. So if your leaves do die all the way back and melt off and go away, don't worry. This is actually beneficial because the plant is actually pulling back all that energy from those leaves that are not set up to be growing in your environment that you have set up for it. And the new leaves that grow out are going to be ready for that, for your environment. So if I was to take some from this tank and put it in a tank with different parameters and stuff like that, I'd plant it in there. Likely the leaves would melt back, would die all the way back to kind of like the little stumps, and then we'd get some new growth about a week or two later. So I got these in a while ago. I've adapted them to my water, which is great. I'm happy that they adapted really well. You can see some new growth coming in. I did have some leaves melt off, which is pretty normal. As I mentioned in the other part of the video, this one's kind of dying out. But as you can see, you get these real dimpling in the leaves. Very nice. I love that. And the underside of these leaves will eventually grow really red, and I'll grab a mature one here in a minute. But I do want to show you guys how to unpot these. So grab the rock wool and kind of pull that out and throw that away. This rock wool is always garbage once you're done. But grab that rock wool and kind of pull out a little chunk that stops it from being stuck in there. And we go ahead and take a look at these roots. Look how nice these roots are. Oh my God. There were none when I got here, or when I received them, which is fine. As you can see, each little plantlet is pretty easy to manage. You can kind of figure out, oh, there's a little plantlet. There's another one here. They'll pull away from the rock wool. You can take this rock wool out of the roots. It's not a big deal if you don't get all of the rock wool, but I try to get as much of it as I can, because it's not beneficial to the system. It's not like it's going to really harm all that much, but it's not beneficial. I don't really want it in there. So we'll discard that. And then we got ourselves our little plantlet right here. Pretty easy to plant. You can trim away a little bit of the extra root, just like that. With your hands. You don't even need any kind of fancy tools or anything. Let's make sure the camera is in focus, but don't need any fancy tools or anything like that. Need some planting tongs. Go ahead and just press this down into the substrate, and you just want this little piece right here to be at the substrate level. So you can see down here we have a little bit of a rhizome, right? There's a little bit of a rhizome down here. It's going to store a lot of its extra energy. Whatever excess reserve energy is in this little rhizome piece right here. And we want these roots, everything to be underneath the substrate, so it's about right there. If whatever my janky thumb is at right here. Usteriana is an extremely slow growing crypt. I've actually got some in the 240 that I've been propagating for, I don't know, 5 or 6 months, something like that. Maybe I think a little bit less than that. Maybe like 4 months. Yeah, sometime around Christmas time. So maybe 4 months or something like that. But it is an extremely slowly propagating cryptocoryne species. It's not going to spread out all crazy, but one of the really good things about it is it'll grow super tall. So it is a great background crypt that will fill in a background area like no other, realistically. There are a couple other species that grow that big, but not as tall that I know of right off the top of my head. But there's like Balancy will grow nice and tall. Jacobsonii will grow nice and big, but not as tall. So it's in the varietal of big crypts. So as you can see back here, this one has already reached up to about, we'll call it like 14 inches or something like that. They can actually hit all the way up to 24 inch. Pretty much that's like the maximum. Anything taller than that, that would be like, I don't know, maybe this is a different plant altogether. All right, got ourselves a mature one versus kind of new baby. So here's our brand new one. I mean, I don't know that I would call it brand new, but I've converted it, and as it matures into this, you'll see the underside of the leaves will turn this really cool red, and the tops of the leaves will start to get some of the red and a lot more of that dimpling and whatnot. We'll get into there. As I mentioned before, what a beauty of a plant. Very excited to get more of this in and start to play with this and add this a lot more into my scapes. And yeah, I'm just incredibly excited for this plant to come in. And it is threatened in the earth, on the earth where you can get it from nature. It is threatened, and that has to do with the aquarium hobby. As I mentioned previously, it's a very slow growing plant, and it's been harvested on a regular basis from nature, so to be supplied to the aquarium hobby. So the first iteration that I have at this location, I got those plants from a local hobbyist, and I have ordered some extra pots from an actual farm that is farming them and not getting them from nature. So these actually are farmed plants and not something that's being ripped out of the environment. They're currently under a threatened status, which isn't that big of a deal, but it's also not great. It's not extinct or anything like that, but it is under a threatened status at this point. And so I would make sure that wherever you're sourcing this plant is actually coming from a farm and it's not being pulled from nature. How common is it that you have to kind of worry about whether or not your plant actually comes from a farm? It's not that common, especially in the United States, because most of the regulations and things that are in place are actually protecting us as customers from that. But from time to time, you do see things getting imported illegally and have been harvested illegally. As one of our affiliate sponsors is the Aquarium Co-op, and I do know that they source all of their plants from reputable farms and stuff like that. So I normally don't have to worry about that situation if I am getting stuff from there. But some of the other people that I do buy plants from and stuff like that, I do need to double check and make sure that they are getting them from an actual farm instead of getting them, from the environment. Bucafe Alondra right now would be, or most people call them booses, would be a perfect example of that. That oftentimes you see really, really, really cheap resellers online and stuff like that, and you're kind of wondering why, like, oh, when I was at the store, I saw that same plant for $40, like it was $39.99, and somebody's selling it online for $6. Fairly interesting how that could be going on, and oftentimes nowadays they're actually just pulling those straight from the environment that they grow in, and booses are quite slowly replicating, similar to the Usteriana, the Cryptocoryne Usteriana, and so it's not actually replicating that much in the environment. So once they strip it away, they're not really allowing the time for it to grow back. It does happen, and it's something that I just want to remind people that, like, oh, if you are interested in aquarium plants and you are collecting more and more and more, and you're starting to get into a plant like this that is, and I say with air quotes rare, and the reason that it is rare is because there's not a lot of people farming it in the United States. It's an easy plant to grow. It is super easy plant to grow. I cannot stress this enough for you guys, that it is a very easy plant. Why is this an easy plant? As I mentioned earlier on, this plant in nature, out on the Earth planet where it has evolved, goes through so many different water parameters throughout the year. As I mentioned, total lack of water to a flooded area to extremely low pH from the monsoon season, a ton of rainwater flushing through with that really low pH, to even the more stagnant times when actually water is filled in and it's actually sitting there, a much higher pH where limestone leaches and allows the pH to go back up, which means that this plant can go from 5.5 pH all the way up to like 9. Now, I wouldn't recommend personally trying to grow it in an aquarium all the way up at 9, but if you were at 7.5 or 7.8, something in that range like that, I would expect some success if you do have a little bit of fertilization and maybe just a tad of injected CO2 or maybe even a liquid CO2. I think you would be fine. I don't think it would be that big of a deal, and if you allow it to adapt to your system, you're going to be, you're going to be in the green basically. You're going to end up with a lot of green plants. So this might be a plant that could go into a system with some higher pH fish and stuff like that, and you would be fairly confident that it will grow, it will fill in and do that kind of stuff, as long as it's not being uprooted. This is a plant that is fairly easy to uproot and kind of disturb and stuff like that, so I wouldn't put it with any kind of fish or any little setup where something's going to be digging it up and kind of messing with it and that kind of stuff. Water temperature, there's quite a wide range of water temperature that this plant can handle. It can go all from I think all the way down to like 50 degrees Fahrenheit, all the way up to about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I think anything over 90 degrees, most people would recognize that it's not that great for plants to be that hot. But anywhere in that like 40 degree range is probably going to be okay. So I would actually probably recommend this plant for maybe something that you are going to grow outside during the summertime. It might put you in a position where you could actually propagate a lot of this plant, hopefully pass it on to some other people during the winter months, like maybe be able to go to an auction in October or something like that, and get a lot of this plant out there and maybe turn a little bit of profit back on your end, because as I mentioned, this is a pretty rare plant and it's a little bit difficult to get your hands on. So it might be an option for people that are growing things outside, maybe in their greenhouse or a pond or something like that, and be able to turn around at the end of the year and do something with it. What are some of the other parameters? As far as fertilization goes and substrate, it is a pretty straightforward plant. I actually right now have it in some pretty basic substrate over here, and I'm fertilizing with a little bit of Easy Green and Easy Iron from Aquarium Co-op. And this is a very simple plant, realistically, to take care of. It does need a decent amount of light, but I would put it in the middle range, you know. As far as crypts go, it's a little hungrier than most other crypts, so I would put it in the medium range of lighting. I'm currently using the Fluval 3.0, which you can see right here. It's bright as all get out, but I do have some deeper tanks on the larger size, so I do find the Fluval 3.0 to be quite useful in this application. Growing fantastically underneath it. A little bit too much direct light and you will get some algae growing on the leaves, because the leaves are a little bit longer lasting, similar to Anubias. Like, it's going to go through and maintain its older leaves. As long as it's in a good environment, it's just going to keep holding on to those old leaves until the environment changes, and then everything will start to melt off and then change into whatever the new environment is for it. So I would bear in mind to not have a ton of direct light on it, and I think you'll be pretty good. This is a really easy plant, really beautiful plant, especially once it's mature, and hopefully you have a good time with it. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, complaints, any of that kind of stuff, drop them down below and let me know what's up. Like and subscribe and all that nonsense, because the internet demands likes and subscribes, right? I don't know. Hopefully it helped, and I'll talk to you later.